Well,
I
my
think
hand's
you
getting
should
sore.
try to land some of those punches from time to time.
It's
Look,
just
it's forget about a firing offense. I mean, there are countries. We're talking first world countries, okay? No, we're not talking tin pot dictatorships or anything like that, where politicians, leaders of the country, actually get arrested and charged with, call it criminal negligence or whatever, for this kind of an egregious error.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's important also. Fine. We're pointing the finger at Justin Trudeau and the Trudeau government, and I'm not trying to mitigate their responsibility here by any stretch of the imagination. But I think it's worthwhile also asking whether or not our tangled and confused and archaic and Soviet style, frankly, healthcare system bears some of the responsibility. I mean, the reality here is that it's the provinces that have to administer these vaccines. It's the provinces that need the medication. It's the provinces that roll it out. But it's not the provinces that actually acquire the vaccine. So you have this extra layer of bureaucracy called the federal government that is in charge of importing the vaccines and then allocating them to the provinces, I guess. And it just seems to be such a strange way of doing it. And so I'm just wondering what, if any, of that not mitigates the responsibility of the government, but because the government ultimately is, even if that was the ultimate cause, the government ultimately is responsible for ensuring that whatever problems there are in the system aren't going to have these kinds of negative impacts. So I don't know, but I'm not as angry as you are. And the reason I'm not as angry as you are, Nick, is because I just don't care. I don't care. I don't care about the virus. I care, surely I care whether or not, elderly people are dying in homes. Don't get me wrong, but I don't care whether or not we have the vaccine, en masse across the country. I don't think it makes a difference one way or the other. That's just my personal opinion.
Okay, but ask yourself this. Let's say it's not a vaccine. Let's say it's something else that's vital to the health or the security of the country. If they can't handle this vaccine rollout, God help us if we ever have a real emergency.
Sure.
Okay?
Sure.
I can't imagine what that would be, but let's say that something happens and there's massive need all across the country.
Right.
If they can't handle something as simple as a vaccine rollout, then we're screwed. And that's what makes me angry.
Potentially.
Yeah. Okay, because we don't know what the threat is.
Right.
Okay. But whatever it turns out to be, God help us, God spare us. But at the same time, your role as a government is to do in emergencies what the individual cannot do for themselves. Whether it's repelling an invading army or dealing with a health crisis or something along that line. Let's say it was a major epidemic of polio. That's a real problem. Or typhus or tuberculosis. Things that just are deadly in and of themselves. And everybody who gets it is at least affected, if not killed. Okay, like take polio as an example. How many lives did that destroy?
Well, these are all good points. But I bring it back to from the big to the small, from the general to the specific. And for me, I think what's really unforgivable is I'm thinking of the handful of people who perhaps mistakenly are terrified of this virus. And they've shut themselves in. They've hermetically sealed themselves. And now you've given them hope.
And then you've taken it away.
You take it away from them.
Yeah. That's cruel.
That's the right word to
That
use.
That is absolute cruelty. False hope.
It may be inadvertent, but it's still cruel.
Isn't that a torture technique? False hope?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I'm not an expert in torture.
Well, neither am I, but I'm just thinking if you want to torture somebody,
I would say so.
Give them false hope.
I would say so.
You know, that's...
I don't... And this is an important object lesson for government overall. And I think that, we like to talk on this show about Winston Churchill.
Yep.
So let's ask ourselves, what would Churchill do in a situation like this? Well, I could tell you that. I know absolutely, without a shred of doubt, that Winston Churchill would have been broadcasting on the air or making statements to Parliament, emphasizing absolutely the worst case scenario. He'd be telling people, there's a virus on the horizon, not a virus, there's a vaccine on the horizon, but you got to know we may not get it until September. And I cannot shake, and if you get it in June,
great.
Okay, you've under-promised and over-delivered,
exactly.
As the saying goes. I cannot shake the feeling that one of the problems that we have with this government is its chronic
over-promising and under-delivering.
And taking a victory lap before they've actually won the race.
Yep. Won it. How about even started
constantly.
It? A lot of times, like look at our commitments to the Paris Accord. When we signed that, we had no intention of ever coming anywhere near that. Because we knew we couldn't. So why bother signing it? It's more of this platitudinous nonsense.
Well, it's not. You see, I obviously I was opposed to the signing of the Paris Climate Accord, and still I'm opposed to us being part of it. But let's give everybody the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that they sincerely believed that they were going to be able to meet their obligations under the terms of that treaty. That's beside the point, because what they did was they signed the accord and then they celebrated as if they had already achieved, as if the agreement, the expression of a desire, a commitment even, to reach those targets was equal to actually achieving them. And celebrating as if you'd actually done that.
Kind of like giving a president the Nobel Prize before he actually does anything.
Except he did. He got the prize too, yeah.
So,
but yeah, no, you're not. You're not wrong.
You're not wrong. Or giving the Stanley Cup out to a team that hasn't played his first game yet.
Yeah, and I don't think, the more we talk about this, I don't think this is just a Justin Trudeau thing. I think this is a societal problem. I think that you see this more and more where people talk big about doing things, and then they all give themselves a pat on the back because they have the best of intentions, sincere intentions even, but in the end they don't fulfill their promises.
The first time I recognized this trend was about 10 years ago. There was a march through Eganville called Take Back the Night. And I read the story, and a bunch of women got together because they're the victims. They're generally seen as the victims of domestic violence. And I'm not picking on them because they're women. I'm picking on them because their mindset. But they were holding up signs, Take Back the Night, we won't take this anymore, and all this stuff. They marched right down Main Street at midnight or at 10 o'clock at night. Okay? And there was nobody else. Nobody saw the parade. And what struck me was the people that they wanted to send the message to weren't there, weren't listening, and didn't care. They were home watching the football game. So what's the point of the parade? They had their little parade. They went down and had their latte and crumpets or whatever they do, and they patted each other on the back. Oh, boy, we sure showed them, even though them didn't bother to show up. It's that kind of vapid symbolism that has no substance to it, that just is another one of these things that makes my mind melt. I mean, I've got nothing against trying to find ways to diminish domestic violence for both genders, not just, violence is violence. Who cares the gender? Okay. Cause there are a lot of cases out there where the men are on the receiving end. Cause not every man's 6'5" and 250 pounds. Okay. Some guys are pretty short and kind of thin, and anyway, I don't want to go down that road too far, but you get my point. That's when I first recognized that there is this symbolism over substance movement that doesn't give a damn about what it accomplishes as long as you feel better when it's over. And that's what's wrong with this stuff.
And, I can't, again, let the occasion pass without asking, I think, what the obvious question is, is there really an epidemic of night street crime in Eganville, Ontario?
Well, I heard there was somebody stole a street sign once.
Okay. Anyway, we don't want to make light of all of this stuff. Of course, it's a serious problem. I'm just not sure how much of a serious problem it is in Eganville, but that's beside the point.
Yeah, and of all towns, why Eganville?
Of all towns, why Eganville?
Poor old Eganville.
Anyway, okay, so we're going to go for a break. If you're listening to the live show, stay put. We'll be back in a few minutes. If you are listening to the podcast, thank you for joining us, and tune in next time to the Nick and Joe Show on ThinkRadio.ca.